Hi, I'm Caleb, part of the Narrate team. Thanks for listening to the Narrate podcast. This week, we look at the significant meaning of a certain day of the week. Adam talks about the importance of the day, Sunday.
Anybody have the three fingers drive him crazy in the picture? Someone texted me about that a couple weeks ago, like, what's with the three fingers? It's actually, my understanding is there's just trivial information that is not on the script. It's this old artistic way of pointing to the Trinity. If you look at a lot of the old art from especially those first few centuries, you'll see most characters have three fingers because it was this kind of allusion to an illiterate culture of the Trinity. So there you go. So you don't have to text me and go like, what's with the three fingers? Or you can, because that's fun too. If you're a guest with us, we're sure thrilled that you're here. My name is Adam, and I get the privilege of being on staff here as well. And this morning, we're going to wrap up this conversation that we started all the way back on Easter, which, by the way, was only 4 weeks ago. It feels like 4 years ago or maybe a lifetime, doesn't it? But it was 4 weeks ago, which means next week is Christmas Eve, right? Just around the corner. We're going to finish this conversation called Seriously, where we've been talking about the resurrection and why it matters and what does it mean for today, what does it mean for the future. And this morning, I want to go inward if we can. For those of you who show up, and I think particularly for those of you who are coming from this place of like, I'm just tired. I'm just like, because it's May and there's that kind of gauntlet that we run through the school year, whether you go to school or not. There's this kind of season, right? And we're falling into June. And so for those of you, whether it's like, I don't know that I can change another diaper, if those of you that are like maybe planning a wedding, and it's like, can we just get married already? Or maybe you've got married last summer and there's this like, could it be year 2, please? Or maybe you started a business or you took a new job or you're new to town, whatever is going on. If you can relate to that sense of, and maybe you've not said this out loud, but just like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to finish this semester, but I don't know that I can do this again. If you're coming from that place, I really want to delve into that this morning because like many of us, I can relate to that. And really the one question that I want to ask this morning, which will sound, I think, hyper-spiritual, but I think we'll come back to it. Somebody asked between services, how does something get hyper-spiritual? And someone else very quickly quipped, very easily. I liked that. Anyway, so here's this question that I want us to spend some time with, and it's simply this. Do you live from Sunday, or do you live for it? And really what I want to do is create a picture in your head where there's this dichotomy of sorts. And what I'm asking is Sunday your launching pad? Is it your springboard? Or is Sunday, in a sense, the net that you fall into? Like, is Sunday the fuel? And of course, we're going to talk about Sunday from a literal perspective, but also from a very metaphorical one. Like, is Sunday the fuel? Is it what propels and drives and makes everything else possible? Or is it the reward? Like, if you can endure another one of those days, another one of those weeks, then you'll get this reward at the end. Is it the carrot? Or it is actually the very thing that propels you into the rest of the week? You know, my interest here, it's not Sunday from a moralistic standpoint. I don't for a second think that Sunday is some toll that we pay to the gods. That I don't think that Sunday is this thing that God needs us to kind of zip ourselves up and, you know, wear our best, and that somehow if we'll just do Sunday in a certain way, we can appease the gods. Certainly lots of cultures have fallen into that. There's evidence that even in first century Jewish culture, like that was a major thing that was going on, and why Jesus got so frustrated was there was a sense of, if we could just do Sabbath perfectly, then the Messiah will come. I'm not approaching it from the perspective that says there's some angry someone somewhere that we need to appease. In fact, what I want to suggest is that Sunday it's a gift, that it's a grace, and that it's really for us. What I really want to get you doing is thinking about how you think about Sunday, thinking about how you think about the starting line to any given day or any given week or any given season. And ultimately what I want to suggest is, far from having this God to appease, that there's this gear inside of us, if you will. I want to suggest that, or maybe ask the question, what if we are like physiologically, biologically, spiritually, emotionally, like what if we are wired for Sunday? Like that there's this gear within us labeled Sunday, metaphorically speaking, and if that gear is somehow engaged in the rhythms of our life, then life goes one way, and if it's disengaged, if it's not being utilized, if it's being ignored, then life goes in an entirely different way. I think, quite frankly, what I want to explore is what if Well, maybe we could ask it this way. Is Sunday the first day, or is it the last? Like, from your perspective, from the way you think about Sunday, is it the first day of your week, or is it the last day of your week? And this all brings us back to Easter. Because Easter, of course, happened in a Jewish culture on a day called Sunday, but to really understand Easter and to really ask this question, like, how does Easter matter for today? There's some simple things that I think that look simple but are often unrecognized about the Jewish calendar that we need to talk about. And the first one is, for the Jewish mind, in the Jewish world that Jesus lived in, Sunday was day one. I think sometimes we even think that Sabbath for them was day one and that Sabbath was on Sunday, neither of which are true. Sunday for the Jew was day one. Sabbath for them was Saturday, which means day one for them wasn't necessarily a day of rest, it was a day of work. See, Sunday's day one, Monday's day two, Tuesday's day three, in case you missed arithmetic when you were growing up, Wednesday's day four, Thursday's day five, Friday's day six, and Saturday's day seven. Now, I was working my way through an N.T. Wright book recently, and he made the comment, N.T. Wright is this Anglican thinker and theologian, and many of us have been journeying with him through the New Testament since all the way back in September. We bought a bunch of they're kind of devotionals, kind of commentaries. They're over on that heat register over there, and just kind of invited you to kind of devotionally work your way through the New Testament with those, which, by the way, if you have one of those that's just collecting dust, like, it's in that stack, the well-intentioned will never be read stack. We would love to get that back, because kind of the design of those was to kind of take one and read it and then bring it back and take another one, and just kind of our own little library thing. And we bought a couple sets, and now they're on back orders, so can't get another set. And so there are some people doing that. So if yours is collecting dust, we won't judge. We won't even see if the pages have been opened, but if you'd bring it back, we'd be grateful. Anyway, N.T. Wright, he made the comment that if he were to be banished to a remote island and was offered only 2 chapters of the New Testament, or of the Bible, he said he would take Romans chapter 8 and John chapter 20. And I heard him say that and immediately felt like little bitty. I was like, I don't even know what those 2 chapters are about. And here's this guy that I really, really trust saying they're the 2 most important. So we're going to jump into John 20, which has a lot to do with Easter, because it actually takes us right back to Easter. So here we go, John chapter 20, verse 1. Early, on the first day of the week. What day of the week? First day of the week. While it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So we're back to Easter Sunday. We're back to that moment. Like, this is the very beginning of Jesus' followers understanding that the tomb was empty. And John goes out of his way to tell us that it's what day of the week? It's Sunday. It's Sunday. Verse 19, on the evening of the first day of the week. So what day are we talking about? Sunday. When the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jews, the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Ta-da, peace be with you." So John's like, hey, there was this day, and then Mary Magdalene, she went to the tomb, and oh, by the way, it was Sunday. And then there's this on the evening of the first day. Now, we're not really sure. I'm not sure anyway. Someone probably is, but I didn't take the time to figure out who they are and what they're sure about. But we're not sure whether we're talking the following Sunday or the same Sunday. I kind of think it's the following Sunday, because the other thing you have to know about the Jewish day is Sunday night for a Jewish person is Saturday night for us. So their day, and we'll loop back to this, their day starts, I believe it's when the first 3 stars appear in the sky after sunset. When you can see 3 of them, it's the next day for us. So tonight, somewhere around 8:45 or so, 3 stars show up. That's actually Monday night. And then there's Monday day. And then on Monday, our Monday, when 3 stars appear, it's actually Tuesday night. So bad news is you already missed Sunday night. You already lost that one this week. So Jesus says on the evening of the first day, seems like it might be a week later, maybe doesn't matter, but here we go, one more. A week later. So a week later from what? Which means we're talking about what day? A week later, we're talking about Sunday again, whether it's this, our Sunday night or their Sunday night or whatever. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Ta-da, peace be with you." Now, you don't have to be a Bible scholar, which none of us are, thankfully. That's good, but I would be intimidated if you were, because I'm not. You don't have to be a scholar to see that what's going on here is John is emphasizing something. And what's he emphasizing? He's emphasizing this Easter thing, it happened on Sunday, or in the Jewish mind, this Easter thing, it happened on day 1. And you begin to ask yourself, okay, if we're going to ask what is the meaning of Easter, maybe we should ask what's the meaning of day one? Like what else happened on day one? Here's a little hint. John starts his gospel, being the Jewish man that he was, with 3 words. See if these words are familiar to you. In the beginning. So the Gospel of John starts with John talking about in the beginning. Where else do we have in the beginning in the text? I know some of you are going like, this is such nerdy Bible trivia stuff. Just trust me. Give me 3 minutes. We're going to land this thing. Where else does in the beginning show up in the text? Genesis chapter 1 starts in the beginning. So John starts his gospel by going, hey, there's day one. And then he finishes it on what? Day one. Like it starts on a Sunday. And now he's looped back and we're in a new day one. What happens in Genesis on the first day? God kicks the whole thing into gear, right? On day one, God starts creating. He starts making things. Things start moving forward. On day 6, what does God do? He makes people. What day did Jesus die? On Friday, which is day 6. On day 6 in Genesis, God says when he's done creating, he's done the people thing, he's created people, he said, okay, you're going to join me in this creation, you're going to stick your hands in the soil, we're going to move this thing forward because the story starts in a garden, but it ends in a city, so there's work to be done, there's collaboration to be a part of. What does God say when he's done creating in day 6? It is finished. Like, I'm done. And Jesus from the cross, what are his final words? It is finished. See, John, he's saying something loud and clear to an Eastern Jewish mind that is missed all too easily by a Western mind. John is saying that old week, it's over. That week God started where things had a great trajectory, but they went south, they got messed up, we had a good thing going on, and then human sin factored into the formula, and everything got messed up. That week's over. The resurrection starts a brand new week. God is creating again. He's collaborating again. He's moving forward again, which raises the question, so what do we do now? And Jesus answers it, and you quickly see why N.T. Wright says this is among the most important things in the text. Jesus says this, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. So Jesus on day 1, does he say, so what you guys should do now is cower and be safe. Like what you should do now is you should huddle up and wait because I'm coming back on a white horse and it'll be great when I do, but it'll be terrible until I do. No, Jesus is going back to day 1, back to Genesis day 1, back to like, hey, we got work to do. And yes, it'll be dangerous and difficult, but risk is part of this adventure you're on with me. Like, go. And then he says this. And with that, one last allusion to Genesis chapter 1, by the way. And with that, he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. Now, okay, so here's the end of Bible trivia. Your friend told you that somehow we talk about real life as well as God. Sunday is the day where God commissions. Sunday is the day where you find purpose. Sunday is the day when you have this moment and God goes like, hey, go do this. That vocation that you pursued, that degree that you have, that degree that you're going after, it's because of Sunday. Because you had this moment, and maybe it was at a retreat, and maybe it was on a walk, maybe it was in a quiet time, whatever, but you had this moment, and God said, hey, I want you to start this business. Hey, I want you to begin pursuing having kids. Hey, I think you should marry her. Hey, I think you should get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and play in the band once a month. Those moments where you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I changing diapers? Like I had a degree, I had a good life, and now I'm changing diapers. That's all I do. Why? It's because of Sunday. Those people that you serve and at times it feels thankless, it's Sunday. Sunday is the day where God gives purpose, where he gives commissioning, where he gives direction. Sunday is where God goes, listen. 7 billion people on the planet. I've got a role for you to play. Sunday is when it all came together and suddenly you understood that your job, though it seemed non-spiritual and insignificant, God went, no. It's kingdom work. It's Sunday. Sunday's the day of commissioning. Sunday's also the day of empowering. Sunday's the day Because now you know you're like, now why did I choose to go to school here? Because I'm terrified. Like, I leave tomorrow. This is horrible. Why did I sign up for this job? Because it was so much easier being an employee. It's because of Sunday. Because God showed up and he not only pointed in a direction, but he also said, hey, I'll give you the ability. I'll empower you. Sunday is the day Moses said, hey, God, I can't do this. Sunday's the day when God said to Moses, hey, I want you to go and I want you to lead these people out of Egypt. And Moses, he said what you say, I can't do this. And God said, it's not about you. Sunday is why those of you who like you give your life to making this community happen, it's why. Because God came alongside and assured you that there's things that you can do for him. It's Sunday. Sunday is where we get commissioned. Sunday is where we get empowered. And here's thus my question. What if Sunday's a gift? Like what if Sunday, what if it's a metaphor? What if it's not just a one-time thing? What if the invitation of Sunday is every day? See, the mistake that I've caught myself in, and this has become glaringly apparent, especially this last week, because I got to travel to Boston, and that was a privilege, but if there's anything that, like, makes the bad part of Adam come out, the unhealthy, the, like, I need therapy and God and all kinds of things, it's traveling to Boston. Like, I know I should like traveling, my stomach's on fire, it's just a weird experience for me. And I don't know about you, but I oftentimes find myself in those moments where I'm just completely overwhelmed. And if I'm honest, my level of being overwhelmed is proportional to when the last time I had a Sunday was. The last time everything started from a place of commissioning and empowerment. What I realized as last week came to an end was I have a tendency to take all these tools, all these tools that I've learned, all these verses, all these tactics, all these techniques, all these things that help me get well, all these things that help me with things like anxiety. I tend to fill my toolbox. And I moved forward, and what hit me and humbled me last week was I moved forward, but I leave the Lord of the universe who originally empowered me in the dust. And I go, hey, thanks for the tools. Thanks for the commissioning. I got this. See, my question is, what if Sunday's a gift? Because the alternative is something that the scriptures capture over and over and over again. It is such a predictable mistake. Jeremiah captures it quite vividly. And let me just read this, and then I'm going to unpack this brilliant Eastern picture. In Jeremiah chapter 2, God through Jeremiah says this, my people have committed two sins. They've forsaken me, the spring of living water, and they've dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Now, in the Eastern Jewish world, it's a wilderness. I've been there. It's dry. Montana's got nothing on it. The weird thing is we think of desert in terms of flat and sand. This is desert in terms of mountains. It's just like our mountains, but they're dry. And if you're going to establish an ancient people, if you're going to establish your family in this land, what do you need? You need water. And you have a couple options, because the Dead Sea is not really a good source of water. And there's really one river flowing through the land. So really you have two options. You can find a spring and establish yourself around a spring, or you can dig for yourself a cistern. Now a spring, you've seen a spring. A spring is where water comes up out of the ground, and you can't really explain why, but there's this things going on in groundwater, and somebody could explain it, but I can't. But it just happens. And it happens perpetually. And there's some major advantages to a spring, aren't there? Like, it's clean, it's cold. Like it just happens. You don't have to dig a hole. It's just there. There's a spring. The other option you have is to dig a hole. If you ever go to Israel, it's just one tour of a cistern after another. It's what I've heard that going to Europe, it's like one castle after another. Israel, it's like, okay, what am I doing? I'm standing in a hole. What is it? It's a cistern. And you're kind of like, okay, another cistern. They're massive. Sometimes they're natural. Sometimes they're man-made. But the idea behind a cistern is, because it rains a couple days a year in Israel, kind of like Helena, what happens is you develop these elaborate systems that capture the rainwaters coming up off the mountains, and you direct all of it into this hole. And what does that allow you to do? It creates your water supply for the next 6 months or so. So there's some major advantages of a cistern. Like, You can see out ahead a few days. No, you can see out ahead a few months. No, if you have a good cistern, Herod had cisterns on Masada that he could have lived for years because these cisterns were massive. See, cisterns offer security. But what's bad about a cistern? Well, the water's stagnant. The water gets brackish and skanky and nasty, and stuff falls into it and dies, but somehow that's still your source of water. The disadvantage of a cistern is it looks like you're secure, but what can happen is it cracks, and you wake up one morning and all that you thought made you secure, it's not there anymore. Now let me read Jeremiah 2 again. My people have committed 2 sins. They've forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. See, it's as though God is saying, listen, listen, listen. The life with me, the invitation of life with me, is that every day you get up and you are reminded of how dependent you are. The cistern is Sunday. The cistern is, God, I need your grace so terribly if I'm even going to live through today. And I can't even think about tomorrow because this I have no control over whether or not this thing's even here tomorrow. Do you ever notice that you're overwhelmed feeling? Like oftentimes you go like, I can do today. It's like Thursday. Ever notice that the degree to which you're overwhelmed has to do with how much your prefrontal cortex is projecting out how many days and weeks and months and years? And suddenly, you're like 21 years old and you're projected when you're 78 years old and you don't have a job and you're freaked out. Have you noticed that? The spring is like, okay, God, I come and I'm reminded of how much I need you today and how refreshing this is today. And boy, I don't have any control over tomorrow. Sunday is when you get commissioned, when God gives purpose. Sunday is when you get power. See, that's why I'm asking this question. Do you live from Sunday or do you live for it? Is what propels you through your week like this connection? Is what propels you through the day is like, listen, I got up 15 minutes earlier. I came before the Lord. I spent some time in Scripture. I prayed, and I showed up terrified. And I left empowered. Like when you made the commitment to start the business or go to the school or have the kid or whatever, you probably made it from a place of commissioning, right? But are you supposed to just live on that perpetually, or are you supposed to revisit it daily? You know, I think there's something brilliant about the fact that the Jewish day starts in the evening. Because at the end of the day, or at the start of the day, pun not intended, like what do you need more than anything if you're going to live from a place of strength? Rest. Was it Patton who said sleeplessness makes cowards out of us all? Isn't it fascinating that we kind of look down our nose at all that we know about science and all that they didn't know 2,000 years ago, and yet somehow in the economy of God and the revelation of God, he said, hold on. A good day, it actually starts when you go to bed. It's like God is going, hey, Sunday, it starts, like I gave you a body, and it starts by being refreshed. And then you rise, and suddenly the problems that were overwhelming when you went to bed, they seem kind of manageable. And then you create space to connect with the living God of the universe through Scripture, through some commentaries, through the readings that we're throwing out. Like, we can help you get this started. And there's this commission, and there's this purpose, and there's this like, I can't even think about tomorrow, but God, I can do today. I can do today. God says, listen, you have an option. You can live off of a cistern, or you can live off of living water. This perpetual spring, and you can't control it. And if it's up to you, you won't have what you need tomorrow. But today, you will. And I was reflecting on that this week and just my own propensity to move further and further away from Sunday. And I couldn't help but think of what I think is one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written, Psalm 23. And just listen to David's perspective here and see if it doesn't describe for you the difference between your spiritual, emotional, mental, physical mindset when you're operating from Sunday versus when you're not. Listen to what David says. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Like, isn't that what you leave a good start to a Sunday feeling? Like, okay, I can do this. We can do this. This is hard, but I can do this. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. It's like God understands that you're going to need rest. I can do this. I got good sleep. You know what else we can say about sleep? Have you ever noticed what happens when you can't sleep? Like, as soon as you can't sleep, first of all, it spirals and it gets worse, right? Because now you're laying there going, oh, great, I'm not going to fall asleep. And then you're really not going to fall asleep. You know what happens when you struggle with sleep? For me, you're reminded that sleep is grace. Sleep is something you absolutely need, and yet you have almost no control over getting it. It's this picture, I think, of God going, hey, there's this thing called Sunday. Let's continue. David says, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Again, isn't that, when you're living from Sunday, isn't that your perspective? I can do this. I can serve these thankless teenagers. I can do this. No offense, teenagers, because we're all thankless. Like, I can go serve them again. I can go sit behind that computer again. I can go work for that boss again. I can change another day's diapers. I can do this. Yep. And then listen to how David finishes, and I think this is just so honest. Even though I walk through the darkest valley. Like, is David under some kind of guise that if God tells him to start the business or take the job or have the kid, that it'll be a cakewalk? No, he's well aware there will be struggles. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What is that? I think it's a guy who's coming fresh out of a Sunday. Like, his Sunday has just begun. And he's going, God, you're with me. And God, we can do this because I'm rested. And God, whatever your purpose is, I'll take a loose grip on that. And God, I know there's going to be struggles, but I also know you're with me. What if Sunday is an invitation? An invitation into a completely different rhythm, a completely different approach to life, a completely different source of strength. What if Sunday is a God going, hey, listen, I'm in the process of making all things new. We are in a completely new creation. God is doing something new. God's saying, I'm sending you, but it starts with a connection. Listen to what Peter says in 2 Peter, and man, the context from which Peter was writing was brutal. I mean, I know it's hard to make the car payment, but these people were being killed for their faith. And listen to what Peter says to them. A grace and peace to yours in abundance, be yours in abundance through the knowledge of God and our Jesus Christ our Lord. And then look at verse 3. This is like flew off the page for me this week. His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life. What is that? The spring. The spring that we might call Sunday. That's what you need to live this thing. That it's his story, not yours. That it's God living his life through you. That Christianity is not bootstraps, pull yourself up, try harder. It's a God going, no, this is my power. That same power lives in us, as the band led us in. Let me just ask you, and I guess really the question is, I wanted to get you thinking about how you think about Sunday. Are you someone who, like, you had this perspective at one point? Maybe you were a high school student, maybe you were in college, maybe it was last year. But there was a point at which, like, this mess you've got yourself in, this mess called life and a house payment and kids and a family and a job and all these things, this mess, it came from a place of Sunday. But have you cut yourself off from that source? Have you taken your toolbox and walked into this grand adventure of life, but you've disconnected from the living water, the spring? Are you somebody who's been trying really hard to follow Jesus, and you can't quite figure out how to do that? Are you trying to do it without Sunday, without personal connection from the Lord? Maybe you're someone and you're trying to figure this whole God thing out, and it seems to make sense to your friend and not to you, or it used to make sense to you and it doesn't anymore. Listen, the only thing that I would provoke you to think about this morning is, like, do you have what you need? to do this thing called life. Because God meets us at that intersection where we find the limit to ourselves. That's where he meets us. And the invitation is not to go live a life for him. It's the invitation to live a life with him. And so really he appeals to those of you who you're at the end of yourself. And you're like, Lord, I don't know that I can bury another person. I don't know that I can raise another kid. I don't know that I can take another day at this job, Lord. I don't know if I can deal with this medical condition for another second. And God's invitation is to revisit Sunday and to start it from a place of commissioning and empowerment, knowing, the whole thing collapses if suddenly the cistern dries up. Let me pray for you. God, as we think about resurrection and all that it means, and God, we know that it's about your kingdom breaking into the world through our feeble, broken, imperfect, good intentions, bad follow-through lives. God, it seems that the only anchor we have to hold on to is an abiding, present relationship with you, and I pray that you'd help us fight for that. That we'd push through the dry moments and the dry chair times and those days where it just seems like you're a million miles away, and we would put in our time. And at the same time, God, we would know that the journey that you're inviting us into is a journey with you, not for you. God, we lay all of our anxieties, family and financial and medical, and we just confess to you, God, like you're asking too much of us. We can't do this. Would you do it with us? Amen.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.